In a small, wind-kissed village resting on the edge of the hills, there lived an old man named Haroun. His house, built of clay and stone, stood quietly beside a stream that sang even in the dry seasons. The villagers called him Uncle Haroun, for he had a way of treating everyone as though they were his own. He was neither wealthy nor powerful, but there was something about his presence, a calmness that lingered like morning mist, that made people stop and smile when they passed him. Haroun had lived alone for nearly 2 decades. His wife had passed away when their daughter, Layla, was a child, and though Layla had long since married and moved to the city, she wrote him letters often. Haroun replied to each one with careful handwriting and small stories from the village, about the trees he planted, the animals he fed, and the neighbors he helped. Every morning, Haroun would rise before the sun, light a small oil lamp, and whisper a short prayer for the world. He would then fill a basket with what he could spare, freshly baked bread, dried figs, or sometimes just a few apples from his garden, and carry it down the narrow dirt path toward the village square. By the time the sun's first rays painted the rooftops, he was already there, leaving small bundles of food by the doors of those who needed them most, the widow with 3 children, the old tailor who couldn't walk, and the young boy who had lost his parents the previous winter. No one ever saw him leave the gifts, but everyone knew it was Haroun. Still, he never admitted it. Maybe kindness walks on its own feet, he would say with a chuckle whenever someone tried to thank him. One winter morning, the sky was a dull gray and the air sharp with frost. The river beside Haroun's house had begun to freeze at the edges. He wrapped himself in his wool shawl and went out to collect firewood. As he walked, he noticed a stranger sitting by the roadside, a young man with torn clothes, shivering violently. His face was pale, and his eyes carried the heavy look of exhaustion. Haroun hurried toward him. "Son, you'll freeze out here," he said softly. The man tried to stand but stumbled. Haroun caught him by the arm and guided him back to his home. Inside, Haroun stoked the fire until the room glowed with warmth. He gave the stranger hot soup and a blanket. The young man ate as though he hadn't tasted food in days. After a while, he whispered, "Thank you, sir. I've been walking for 3 nights. I lost my work in the city and had nowhere to go." Haroun nodded, placing another log on the fire. "Sometimes losing your way helps you find the right one," he said kindly. "Rest now. Tomorrow will be brighter." The stranger smiled weakly, tears glimmering in his tired eyes. "My name is Rami," he said. "I don't know how to repay you." "Repay?" Haroun smiled. "Son, if I gave only to be repaid, my kindness would be a trade. Rest. That's enough for now." Days turned into weeks. The snow fell heavier, painting the village in silence. Rami stayed with Haroun, helping him with chores, fetching water, and repairing the roof that leaked. Haroun never asked him to leave nor demanded anything in return. He simply treated him like family. In those quiet winter nights, they would sit by the fire as Haroun told stories about his youth, how he had once been a carpenter, how he met his wife at the spring fair, and how he learned that life gives back to those who give without counting. One evening, Rami said, "You've done so much for me, Uncle Haroun. I want to repay your kindness. Tell me what I can do." Haroun shook his head gently. "You can't repay kindness, my boy. You can only pass it on. Somewhere down your path, you'll find someone who needs warmth, just as you did. Give it to them. That's how kindness grows." Rami thought about those words long after the fire had gone out. Something in his heart shifted that night, a quiet understanding that not all giving was meant to return. By early spring, the snow began to melt. Birds returned, and the air smelled of earth and new beginnings. Rami, now stronger and healthier, told Haroun he wanted to travel again, to find work, rebuild his life, and help others as Haroun had helped him. Haroun packed him a small bag with food, a blanket, and a wooden carving he had made, a small bird with open wings. "Take this," he said. Let it remind you that you're free to fly wherever life takes you. And remember, the best giving asks for nothing. Rami hugged him tightly, tears brimming in his eyes. I'll never forget you, he whispered. After he left, Haroon went back to his quiet routines. He still delivered bread and fruit before dawn, still cared for the stray dogs and cats that wandered near his garden. Life went on, slow and kind, as it always had. Years passed. Haroon grew older, his hair white as snow, his hands trembling when he wrote letters to Layla. His eyesight dimmed, and walking became harder, yet his spirit remained bright. The villagers often stopped by to bring him food or help him with chores. When they thanked him for all the years he had helped them, he simply smiled and said, "Kindness always comes home." Then, one cold evening, a heavy storm swept through the valley. The wind howled like a wild beast, tearing roofs and flooding the small river. Trees fell, and people rushed to protect their homes. Haroon's old house, built of clay and stone, could not hold against the force of the storm. The roof caved in, and the river flooded the garden. By morning, Haroon's house stood half-ruined. When the storm cleared, villagers hurried to check on him. They found him sitting on the steps, wrapped in a wet blanket, shivering but calm. "My house tried its best," he said with a faint smile. "It's time I gave it rest." The villagers insisted he stay with one of them, but Haroon refused. "There are others who need a roof more than I do," he said. "I'll be fine." Later that day, as the sun set behind the hills, a caravan arrived at the village, a group of travelers bringing supplies and rebuilding tools. At the front rode a man in fine but humble clothes, his eyes searching the crowd. When he saw Haroon, he leapt off his horse and ran toward him. "Uncle Haroon," the man cried. It was Rami. He looked different, older, stronger, his face glowing with gratitude and purpose. Behind him were carts filled with lumber, blankets, and food. "I came as soon as I heard about the storm," Rami said. "We were passing nearby when a villager told us what happened." Haroon looked surprised. "How did you know to come here?" Rami smiled. "Because, uncle, I built my life on your kindness. After I left, I found work in the city, then started a small company that helps rebuild homes for the poor. Every village we visit, I tell your story, the man who gave and asked for nothing. And now I've come to give back, not to you alone, but to this whole village that raised me when I had no one." Tears welled in Haroon's eyes. He looked around and saw Rami's team unloading food for families, repairing broken roofs, and distributing warm clothes to children. Haroon whispered, "So the bird finally flew." Rami knelt beside him. "You taught me how." Over the next few weeks, the village transformed. Houses were rebuilt stronger than before. The stream was cleared, and bridges restored. Rami made sure Haroon's home was repaired too, though Haroon insisted on helping as much as his weak hands would allow. When everything was done, Rami asked Haroon to move in with him to the city, where he could rest comfortably. But Haroon refused again, smiling as he watched children playing near the new bridge. "This village still needs old stories," he said. "And my heart belongs where the river sings." That night, under a sky full of stars, Haroon sat outside his rebuilt home. Rami joined him, and they shared a quiet meal. The air was cool, and the scent of spring drifted from the fields. Haroon said softly, "You've done something wonderful, my boy. But remember, kindness doesn't live in grand gestures, it lives in the small things we do without being asked." Rami nodded. "I know. I've seen how one act of kindness becomes 100 when it travels." Haroon looked at him with pride. "Then I can rest easy." The following morning, when the first light touched the hills, the villagers found Haroon sitting in his chair by the door, his eyes closed, a gentle smile on his lips. He had passed peacefully in his sleep, as though the dawn itself had carried him away. In his hands was the wooden bird he had once given to Rami. The village mourned him deeply, but his presence never really left. People began to live as he had taught them, to give quietly, to help freely, to love without reason. And every spring, when the flowers bloomed by the river, they would leave baskets of bread and fruit on doorsteps in his memory. Rami stayed for the ceremony, then built a small school near the river and named it, the House of Giving. On its walls, he inscribed the words Harun had once said, "The best giving asks for nothing." Years later, when travelers passed through that village, they always heard stories of the old man by the stream whose kindness had built a legacy of love. No one could quite measure how far his giving had reached, perhaps across mountains, perhaps across generations, but everyone agreed on one thing: Harun had shown that the purest form of kindness is the one that expects nothing, yet gives everything. And so, long after his home had crumbled and his footprints had faded, the spirit of his giving lived on, in the laughter of children, in the rebuilt homes, and in the hearts that learned from him that true generosity is not about wealth or recognition. It is about the quiet grace of giving simply because one can.